Welcome to the United States of America podcast. I am your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here on North Carolina. If you've missed past episodes, please be sure to take the time to watch the first episode and watch the rest like a documentary. We are people at peace, and we have declared peace to all nations around the world. This is not a marketing or promotional channel. We are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you. We are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We have moderators who are assisting in the comment section. Be kind and self-govern. If you have questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. I am joined on air with Ohio Chairwoman Lisa Schaefer. Now I am proud to introduce you to Justice Anna Maria, who is joining us live from Alaska today. Hey, ladies.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, guys. How's everything?
Everybody we're praying for you, Anna. Everyone's lifting you in prayer, and I thought we would share with everyone, the nerve of these people to be in. We don't know what's going on exactly, but Anna's granddaughter is missing. And Anna, would you like to share the information with everybody?
Well, it's everybody's worst nightmare. Any parent or grandparent anywhere. She was at a summer school program in Springfield, Massachusetts, and disappeared last Friday. We're just stunned. And she's only 12 years old, so we are left, wondering. She left with a bunch of kids. She left the school for lunch with a bunch of kids, and they all came back, but she didn't.
Where do they go? We don't know.
Just kids, wandering out having lunch and then coming back to a program at school. And
what's her name, Anna, so we can all pray powerfully?
Alexis Belcher. I'm getting a photograph of her so that everybody knows.
This is not okay, everybody. We're living men and women. We're not actors. We're not politicians.
Right. And nobody deserves it.
Nobody.
Yeah, so, we're so sorry. We've been praying this morning as an assembly for you as well. So, hopefully all of our prayers will reveal and bring her home.
Yes. Well, statistically, we've got a good chance that she'll show up okay.
We're going to believe it. We're going to be speaking that right on into, manifestation. She's coming home, and she's going to be fine.
So the Springfield, Massachusetts police need to be held accountable, and they need to get their act together and get out there and go find her. Period.
Well, and the school and everybody concerned. I mean, just the attitude has been horrible. I mean, it's like, oh, well, 12-year-old girl disappears and
how is this okay?
Just completely lackadaisical, like, another 12-year-old goes missing.
No.
Having been a school principal, I can tell you, I used to count all my little ducklings, all of them. And if we were somewhere, I watched my little ducklings, just to make sure that when we went anywhere, if there was anybody that was straying sideways, they were brought back in. And if not, then there was a bunch of kids that were asked questions, immediately, so that we knew, what was going on. So it's unacceptable. It is completely unacceptable. It's unacceptable for the school. It's unacceptable for the law enforcement. And, they should be being held accountable to all of that.
Well, it's terribly bad performance on their part, but just the attitude when a child is missing. I mean, obviously they didn't do their job in terms of keeping track of a child who was in a program and but then on top of it to just kind of blow you off and say, oh well, another 12-year-old goes missing.
Unbelievable.
That attitude.
There's quite a few that have been missing in Springfield, though, boys and girls. If you look at some of the missing children reports, it seems to be centered right there too. So they got, this is just not. It's not an unusual thing, and they're not doing anything about it.
Well, if they've got a ring of traffickers there in the schools or in the CPS or any of the organizations that regularly deal with children, it could even be the YMCA or things like that. You don't know where these vermin hide out. But if they've got a large number of kids going missing, that's a red flag right there that, something is wrong in Springfield.
That's right. That's right. And, that area, I used to go out and ski out there when I was in college. And, you're right on the edge of the Green Mountains. There's a lot of cottages and homes and wood, forest and mountain that's right there that, just needs to be explored.
Yeah, well, I've been told that I've never been to Springfield but I've been told that it's a beautiful place, a beautiful area.
My husband actually went to Springfield University. So
Really?
He did.
Oh,
He went
well,
there. Yep.
Yeah, I've been told that it's a beautiful area, but apparently they're not up to speed on taking care of their kids. Anyway,
we're here, you're here, and we have a lot of great questions, Anna. So unless there's something else specific that you want to dive into, I was going to just go right to those questions today.
Sure, okay. Absolutely.
All right. Daily Wildcat says, would you explain the process on how you're getting us access to our prepaid credit? Is this similar to what Heather Tucci tried to do? If not, how is it different? How much longer before we can access it?
Well, basically, the prepaid credit is a mirror of the national debt. Because in the debt credit economic system like we have, every time a debt is created, so is an equal credit. And you can observe this if you just think about it. On one side of the transaction, you have somebody with say, a $10 bill. On the other side of the transaction, you've got somebody with something like a hamburger and fries, right? So there's an equal value exchange every time there's a transaction. There's someone providing the debt, the Federal Reserve note, which is an IOU, and someone who's providing the credit, the actual goods and services, right? So the person providing the goods and services never actually gets paid. They never actually get anything that's of considerable value. I mean, the dollar bill is a representation of future payment. Someday we're going to pay you something for giving me a hamburger and fries today. A Federal Reserve note is a promissory note. It's an IOU from the Federal Reserve banks. But if you examine that bill, you will notice that although it's signed by the Secretary of the Treasury and the Treasurer of the United States, there is nothing on that bill that tells you when you're going to get paid or in what form you're going to get paid. It doesn't say, good for an ounce of silver at the Treasury. It just says, someday we'll pay you.
We'll gladly pay you Tuesday for the hamburger today, right?
Yes, exactly. And so this is this is how the prepaid credit accumulates, because you never actually get paid in any of these transactions. And all of the hamburgers and the french fries and the massages and the dental work and everything else that is received in exchange is a credit which hasn't been credited to you. So at what point do you throw up your hands and say, since they've been doing this since 1933, right? At what point do you just say, nah, we're not going to give you any more credit? You've abused the credit. You've gone out and spent billions on horrible things that aren't in your contract. You've been extremely remiss in your duties. You've done all these other things that are outside your contract. Your credit is at an end. Okay? And so now we're going to reverse things, and we're going to issue prepaid credit, which you earned by, contributing your hamburger and whatever. So it's prepaid credit. You already paid for the credit. And that lump sum of credit that you are owed is equal to the national debt. Now, they never credited you with all your contributions, and they never put all your contributions on the books, and they certainly never balanced the books. They just let this run, and they kept track of the national debt, but they never actually brought the two sides of the bookkeeping together and said, okay, well, they balance out, and so there's zero debt left. There's no national debt. Instead, they kept the national debt writing, and they charged interest on it as if it actually existed, when in fact it had already been paid off. It was paid off as it was happening. Say you paid it off. You continued to give them a hamburger and french fries in exchange for their promissory notes, and they never actually credited you with giving them the hamburger. If they had credited you as the process went on, well, then there would have been no national debt, and they would have just had this zero-sum transaction, is what it's called, and there would have been no interest to pay on the national debt. But they didn't do that either. Not only did they not credit you, they actually made it look like there was all this interest accruing on a debt that hadn't been paid back to the Federal Reserve. So there's all that interest money that they charged that, if the system had been run properly, wouldn't have ever needed to be paid. So you were not only not credited, you were charged for interest that you didn't owe. Now, it's even worse than that, folks, because once you had that $10 bill, you unwittingly did the same thing to the next guy in line. And once again, that same promissory note, that same $10 bill, say, caused the pharmacist to give you some medicine. All right? So his contribution also didn't get credited, but it's the same dollar bill. So every time there's this cycle, this transaction going on, somebody isn't getting credited, and it's the same IOU. So this one IOU is generating thousands of dollars worth of goods and services that are being expended by the people in this country before that dollar bill just wears out. And somebody at the bank says, oh, well, this one's dead. Okay. Thousands of dollars get collected for that one $10 bill over the course of the lifetime of that one $10 bill. So they're bilking you that way too. And there's really no way to track that except by an estimate of the average lifetime of a Federal Reserve note in circulation. So we can only approximate how much you're actually owed. but it is huge. It is absolutely mind-bendingly huge how much prepaid credit you are owed as a result of this swindle. And so the prepaid credit is arising from the Federal Reserve note swindle that we've all been subjected to. And it is prepaid because you prepaid it. If you stop and think about it, it was paid the very first time that note entered circulation. And however many times it was passed around the circle was just nothing but pure profit for the bilkers and pilkers that were circulating that note in the first place, because there was absolutely no way that it could be properly accounted for. There was no process by which it was removed from the system once it was issued, you see. So I think that explains where the prepaid credit comes from. And yes, it is similar in a way to what Heather Ann Tucci-Giraffe tried to do, or rather, we should say it properly, the Paradigm Project. The Paradigm Project was launched by government employees who became aware of this, and a lawyer, Heather Ann Tucci-Giraffe. And what they did was that they went through and they claimed all of this, all these assets of the wrongdoers, and they rolled it into a trust that they called the One People's Trust, the OP Trust. And they were trying to then redistribute the money to people. And I'm not exactly sure what plan they had for the distribution of all these funds that, the assets and the credit that they were trying to capture. But the fundamental thing is that they did not have the standing to do what they were trying to do. And this is something I have been harping on for ages. But they were all acting as what we call capital U dot capital S dot capital C citizens. And U.S. citizens aren't even Americans. They're not operating in the capacity or identity, political identity of Americans. They are acting in the role of territorials, as if they were from Puerto Rico. And for all of you who don't know, Puerto Rico is a British Commonwealth nation. It's not American. It's not an American state. It does not function under the same laws. And it's a separate country, essentially, that has sort of sheltered in our wings because it's close to our shores. So
it's like even when we're watching the Olympics right now, if anybody's watching it, Anna, it's like the USA. It's not America.
Right.
And this is the problem. We get this question over and over and over again. Oh, Anna wrote an article. Is this only for declared Americans? It's only for Americans. It's only for Americans. You're not an American if you haven't declared, because we've already explained that they usurped us.
Right. They registered everybody as a capital U dot capital S dot capital C citizen. And when you do that, when you are registered as one of their citizens, then you not only acquire a whole bunch of foreign debt and a whole bunch of foreign
blame for all kinds of nonsense, all this criminal activity, because we're not criminals doing that, right?
You not only gain all those citizenship obligations and debts that accrue to that particular political status, but you also lose your constitutional guarantees and protections, and you also lose your ability to own land in this country. And there are other things that you lose too, but those are the biggies. So not only do you gain things you don't want, additional citizenship obligations and debts, but you lose things that you do want, your constitutional guarantees in form of law and your ability to own private property in this country. So you can see that it's a real big problem to be wandering around unknowingly bound by an unconscionable citizenship contract. And that's what they've done. By registering American babies, they've all mislabeled and misidentified us and cast us into this foreign citizenship status that we don't need, don't want, and would never willingly choose.
No.
But anyway, they do this by registering babies and issuing birth certificates when we're just babies in our cradles. And so Heather Ann Tucci-Giraffe and her cohorts were all in this foreign political status while they were trying to do this, while they were trying to recapture the assets and roll them all into the op trust. Well, they couldn't do that because they're not Americans and they don't have a stake in the assets. So it made it look like they were stealing the assets and doing all this stuff to administer and roll the assets around when they didn't have any claim on the assets. They didn't have any way of actually claiming the assets because they didn't have the standing as Americans to claim the assets or do anything with them.
Mm.
And so
just like the Colorado 9, just like anybody and everybody who's ever really gotten in big trouble because they weren't following what you were saying.
Right. And so Heather Ann Tucci-Giraffe was in an even worse position because not only was she a U.S. citizen, she was a bar attorney.
Oh, no.
And so as a member of the bar, she could be specially prosecuted and could be specially disciplined by her fellow bar members.
Wow.
And I'm sure that she was no more aware of the importance of being an American versus being a U.S. citizen than most of us are. And so they hauled her in on special charges and kind of used her to make an example of to all the other bar attorneys and threw her in prison for 5 years, even though everybody knew that what she was doing was well intentioned. The fact that she was unaware of this foreign citizenship being cast on her, conferred on her, just added to the, I guess you could say, the boondoggle that was promoted by the Bar Association in specially prosecuting her.
Wow.
So she's been in jail.
So she then says, how much longer? Well, hey, friends, I think Anna...
Everything the Paradigm Project did, everything that they exposed, was rendered useless by the fact that they didn't have standing to do it.
Right.
But we came along and we did it. Okay, we did it a different way, but we did it. Mm-hmm. And we had the standing to do it. Now we find out that all of this depends upon actual factual assets. I want you to think about this very carefully. We have actual physical assets like gold, silver, oil, apples, sow bellies, wheat. We have actual physical assets. And then we have credit, which is a different beastie that's based on the physical assets, right? So there are two different things here. There's actual assets, which includes actual money like silver and gold coin, okay? And then we have this class of things called credits that are based on consumer script. They are things like IOU notes and stocks and bonds and things of that nature, okay? We have a situation here where all of the physical assets are tracked on one system, which is called the beast system. For all of those who are into end time prophecy, you're going to love this. It's a giant supercomputer in Belgium, and it's literally called the beast. And it tracks all physical assets. And it's this incredible, amazing tracking system that was developed here in the United States by a very, very, very talented engineer. Anyway, this system produces what's called the gray screens that the banks and everybody uses to track where an asset is and what kind of transactions are playing off that asset. So you can sit there like any computer screen and you can see it going flip, 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 flip. And, all these asset transactions are there. But about 25 years ago, give or take, I don't have a specific date, but I know it was prior to 2005. One of the programmers that worked on this system, they were riding him so hard to do the work, and they were being so mean to him, and they were threatening him. They were threatening his family. One day he just didn't show up to work, and he took the access codes with him. And he's never been seen or heard from again. He just flat out disappeared.
For the beast system?
For the beast system. So they can't actually open any of those accounts, and they can't stop the trading in general. It's like it's on autopilot. Just, it's the only thing that they can do, the only control that they have is that if they see a really bad transaction happening, say that they see money that's been laundered from a drug cartel hit the screen, they can stop it. But that's it. They have the ability to say no, but they don't have the ability to say go. And it's been this way for decades. They've been trying to solve this problem for decades. Well, anyway, so the gray screens have this limitation. This whole system, this whole tracking system has this terrible limitation. So they rebuilt it. They rebuilt the beast, and they're calling it the quantum financial system, right? And it's this whiz-bang computer system that was built by the same people that built the beast. Okay, it's these tracking engineers, these computer tracking engineers who are just absolutely phenomenally gifted, and they built another new beast system, another new supercomputer, right? Which they call the QFS, the quantum financial system. Okay, but it's sitting there like a brand new Cadillac that just rolled off the assembly line with no gas in it, without the ability to access the accounts from the beast, no way to download all that information, which is constantly accruing on the beast.
Which is our credit.
Well, it's tracking assets. It's tracking.
All the assets, anything that would back.
Right. Any gold, silver, oil, land, cash, all this stuff, all the assets are being tracked by the beast system. And there's no way to download the information from the beast to the new QFS system. So the QFS system is just sitting there.
As discussed.
Thank you. It's just sitting there with nowhere to go because they can't take the gas, they can't take the information downloaded from the beast system and put it in the new car. And, people are running around and all excited and expecting the QFS system to come save them. Well, this problem has been ongoing for, 20, 25 years. And
is this tied to the Nicera Jacera thing too also?
Well, it's tied to their ability to do anything, because if they can't get control of the asset tracking, then they can't get control of the asset. You see? And so they're in a hell of a mess. And they are, it's like a runaway train, okay? It's the computer equivalent of a runaway train. Um, and eventually enough mistakes will accrue in the system just by, the iterations of all of the transactions taking place against the value of all these assets and all of the different trades that go back and forth between all the assets, that eventually the beast is just going to go blow. It's just going to shut down. And then what happens? Well, if you think of the beast that's tracking all of the physical assets, and then you think of a super beast that's tracking all the credit assets that are being spun off of the physical assets, you see the complete craziness of the entire situation, where if you start out with one apple and then you create credit based on that apple, say you get in the Federal Reserve System, where they are trading on the reserve that's created by people not all needing the same money at the same time, right? They set up 10 times more credit than the apple would normally have.
Would actually generate. Where do we sit in all of this? Where are we sitting in all of this?
What do you mean?
I mean, your system that you've put together with GFG, where is that sitting with all of this chaos and confusion?
Outside of it, thankfully.
Right. So,
But
like,
I'm
you're
trying to get
obviously
to the point, Niti. Okay.
okay.
The point is that as bad as it is with the beast system, it's even worse with the credit system, because the credit has been generated off the beast assets. So if the beast system, if its asset system is out of control, then the credit system is even more out of control, because the credit system is just being spun off the value of the assets, the actual physical assets. So the whole system is out of control. It's a runaway train, and it's worldwide. Okay. And so nobody knows where the computer programmer who has the access codes is. And all these other people, well, you remember Kim Guggen? She was swaggering around and claiming she had the access codes. Well, she took her turn, and all she could do is do what all the other programmers have done, which is to stare at the gray screens. And yeah, she can block transactions, but she cannot access the actual accounts. She cannot open the accounts. So there have been many, many attempts over the years, and many people who claim to have the codes, and many people who've come forward, but nobody's had the secret sauce and the slipper of the right size. So that's where it all stands with the conventional system. So here we come. After the great meltdown of 2007, 2008, a new system was obviously needed. And so one brilliant man said, well, we got to do something. We can't just sit here. And so he started building a new banking system. And he had a completely different vision of what banking should be than anything that has ever been seen on the planet Earth before. And he was basically focusing on the prepaid credit that was owed to us, and on and using the prepaid credit as a currency, and on the actual assets. And of course, they were gaining value as more and more people continued to need and desire the same fixed or fairly fixed amount of asset base. Okay, so he's designing a system that's a positive system. The old system was a negative system based on the concept of scarcity and lack and debt. And he's building this system that's based on prepaid credit and actual asset base. So you can think of Global's system as being positive, and you can think of the old system as being based on negative numbers. Okay. So he started building this back in 2007. And for the past years, 17 years now, he's been developing this system and developing it so that it can stretch worldwide. Now, what we can do is at any particular moment in history, we can peg the value of one of the assets in the beast system. Say that we have a clump of gold, a stockpile of gold that's in the beast system. We can look on the gray screen and we can see that, okay, this is the value of that at this moment. And we can peg it. We can say, okay, as of this date and this time, this is what's there. Boom. And we can capture that and we can ledger it to our system. Now the beast system is going to keep rolling, and that the value of that asset is going to keep going up and down, up and down, up and down. But we have a starting point, and we can hand ledger it into our system. And from there on, it becomes controllable and knowable again in terms of what we're doing with it. And that gives us a basis then of starting over and having assets that we can use to ledger. And that gives us a way of moving forward from this horrible situation where we can begin rebuilding. Now, each asset that is ledgered is, how do I say this? Each one of them is going to be at a different date and time, okay? One will be ledgered on July 21st, 2024, 13:01 hours, 47 seconds, and then the next one will be at a different time. There'll be a different timestamp on all of these, which is going to be its own nightmare, because from there you're going to have to track all the ups and downs of the values of all of these assets that are being spewed off the beast system. So no matter what you do, it's going to be a nightmare. But with the Global Family Group system in place, we have a means of actually distributing prepaid credit. We have a means of distributing credit that's based on assets. So we have an asset-based system. And we can start attaching the tracking system to track changes in the value of each of the accounts that we add to our system. So we can pick up at this specific point, and then we can track what happens to the value of that asset. So it's a very clumsy, hard way to do it without access to a download from the beast system, but it works, and we can justify it. And since those are our assets, we have standing to do this. So we're having to very clumsily and with, we're having to cobble together a way of going forward so that people can live and so that they can buy bread at the grocery store. And we're doing it. And it's more complex than you would imagine. It's a lot of work, and it's just there are a lot of different factors that play into making any of this work because um, you know it all depends on electricity. It all depends on fiber optic cables that are laid along the seabeds of the world. Um, Hundreds of fiber optic cables that are transatlantic and transpacific and everything else. So, what happens if you have a major volcano blow up right in the middle of a nest of one of these, a nexus point of all these transatlantic and transpacific cables? Well, then you knock out all of the computer ability, the kind of interactive computer ability that we're so used to. And so not only is the system itself, a nightmare of trying to navigate and lock down specific assets and ledger them into a system and then deliver that liquidity into the financial market. But then it also depends on all these other things like electricity being available and the fiber optic connection being available. And so there are all these different variables that make this whole situation very unstable and very iffy. And that part of it is the same for the beast system as it is for us, but it's still um, something that people need to think about and be aware of, that our entire world has been built on electricity, and the electrical grid worldwide is not stable or safe. It is not secured. There's one fundamental thing that we all depend upon, electricity, and the connectivity that electricity allows has never really been nailed down. And so, what happens if we have an EMF, a electromagnetic pulse event, where a nuclear bomb, even a single nuclear bomb, exploded at the right elevation, the right altitude, will create an electromagnetic pulse that can take out large amounts of electrical capacity. And rebuilding that electrical capacity and rebuilding the systems that depend on that electrical capacity is just mind-boggling. I mean, everything from cars and washing machines to supercomputers and electrical guidance systems, everything just.
Mm-hmm. And the beast. I mean, it sounds like. So do these bad guys want the beast to get?
They want the beast to be cracked open. They want the access codes. I mean, getting those access codes is probably the biggest CIA, DIA, MI6. It's probably one of the biggest operations in the history of the world, is trying to track this one computer programmer. But he's gone. He stayed gone for 25 years, so I don't know. Is he still alive out there somewhere? It seems kind of crazy.
I have a question. So, I was reading this week about there was a quick little blurb that I saw about the fact that BRICS is ditching the SWIFT system, which SWIFT is the transfer system for all the financial transactions across the world. It was king for a long time. But if they ditch that system, I know connectivity for us is one of the issues. How do we connect to and through, into the systems? Would SWIFT be, would the BRICS, would there be a possibility you could use the BRICS system for transfer?
BRICS is an asset-backed currency system only. So, for example, if you want to trade on BRICS, and you were British, you would have to use the British pound sterling, and you'd have to use silver as your, your asset-backed currency. We have the AFD, so yes, we could join BRICS, but then we would be under the same thumb that we're under now with SWIFT. There would still be just this one system. It would have a monopoly. They would be able to say yay or nay to transactions. It would be just like Standard Oil having control of the oil pipelines and being able to say whose oil gets to market and whose doesn't. And so, we've been between the horns of a dilemma here for a long time. If we use a credit-backed currency, then we're stuck with SWIFT, and it has a monopoly on everything that is coercive and monopolistic and self-interested. If we, go with BRICS and use an asset-backed currency like AFD, well, then everything that enters their system is under their thumb and forefinger, and they have a monopoly. So the idea is to not have a monopolistic system that can be politically tweaked and motivated and manipulated to hurt individuals or individual businesses. And so that's what we've developed with the Global Family Bank, is a system that is not monopolistic and is not controlled like that. It's a system where you can trade either fiat credit-based instruments on the commercial side, or you can trade asset-backed money on the international trade side. And none of it is based on the kind of control that these other systems, SWIFTs and BRICS, use. We have a free system in that everything is tracked, but nobody's sitting there with a kill switch on it, delaying it and messing with it. And nobody has that kind of monopolistic coercive power. So that's what we're working for, is this. That's why we call it a bilateral banking system, because it can function either in commerce or in international trade. And it's private in that all these transactions are tracked and transparent on the system. If say there's law enforcement comes forward with proof that there's money laundering or something like that going on, we can cut that account from being able to function. But the essence of it, it's all just blockchain. And so there isn't a SWIFT system. It's direct. It's, me and Niti have a deal, and I want to transfer money to her so that she can sell me some pasture-raised beef. Okay? And it's just boom. There's no intervening system there. There's no SWIFT. There's no BRICS. There's no separate
third-party tracking. Like there's nobody else tracking it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's nobody else tracking it, and there's nobody else involved. That's the thing. There's no pipeline connecting us. We're just connecting ourselves. Right. And so because there's no pipeline with somebody standing there with a valve and going, all that's gone. That middleman infrastructure is just blown out of the Global Family Bank structure. There's no such thing. There's a transaction record of me sending Niti, and there's a receipt record of her receiving it. And, the amount of the transaction is obvious, but that's it. It's just instantaneous. Boom. We connect, we break apart. And so there's no process of me depositing it in a bank and then the bank having to do a transaction with another bank, and then the bank having to put it in Niti's separate account, right? All of that stuff is just part of the SWIFT system's control mechanism. Mm. It's a middleman, getting in the middle of that transaction and being able to prevent or expedite that transaction because they're in the middle. Well, we get rid of the middleman, and it's just Niti and I. And so that's what our system does. It just says to hell with the middlemen and all the monopolistic transfer garbage. It's just from now on, it's just going to be me and some guy in Dublin cutting a deal for some Irish whiskey. It's just, and that's our concept. Is we believe that's the way it should be. We don't believe that, generally speaking, there should be any kind of transfer monopoly or middleman in the middle of trade or commerce. And they try to justify what they've done in the past, but in reality, it's just a coercive and unauthorized abuse of the right to trade and to conduct business by governments that would be better. They'd be more in line with what needs to happen if they simply kept their noses in their own business and did their jobs, their actual jobs that have been assigned to them by the people in their respective nations. Instead, they've been acting in their own behalf. They went into business for themselves a long time ago, and they've been bilking and pilking the people that they are employed by and creating these monopolies of all kinds, these transfer monopolies. They do the same thing with electricity. They do the same thing with water. They try to insert themselves into all of these transactions as middlemen and control these transactions as middlemen, and they really don't have any right or reason to do that. They use the example of money laundering. Well, the U.S. government is one of the biggest money launderers on the planet.
It's true.
And so, we would be all better off if it were just a very simple system of, without the middlemen, which Global has built, of just going, boom, Niti and I did a transaction. Okay, Mr. FBI man, you got a problem with that transaction? You want to prove that it was actually money laundering, or you want to prove that it was connected to illegal drugs? All right, if you got any evidence, come forward. Otherwise, go pound sand. And
I always thought that the ACH system, the ACH system of transfer, that was not a SWIFT system. It was bank to bank, basically account to account, was sort of the answer when it first came out, until the banks started controlling that and placing, well, we can send this ACH, but it's going to take 3 days to get there, so that they could trade the money or whatever in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
just middlemen.
it's just, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I remember when ACH came out and it was an option over SWIFT, and it was much less expensive. I mean, to send a SWIFT was, $45, and send an ACH was 50 cents through the bank, and originally you could set up an ACH and the next day or that night, that ACH would have taken place. Now it can take 2 days, or because they're running it through the system, doing whatever their incremental baloney is that they do, and then transferring it over. So yeah,
Well,
I get it.
that goes on. It's called night window trading.
Exactly.
And, at 6:00, every bank all over starts their new round, their new accounting phase. Every day, everything gets accounted for, and what comes in and what goes out is accounted for every single day in every bank. It happens at 6:00 at night in this country. And at that moment, there's like a reset button on the whole system. Well, then all of these transfers that are in progress are in a tube, right, ready to land somewhere. Well, the bankers started figuring out that, oh, gee, I have control of this money for, 12 hours. How can I profit myself from this? And so they have this money in their control for 12 hours while it's in transit, say.
Mm-hmm.
They have ways of pegging how much money is in the tube. And then they trade on that. They use it as an asset and they trade on it. And they can keep it in the tube for up to a week now.
Yep.
It used
5
to
to
be
7 days, they say. 5 to 7 business
right.
days.
And they're trading on that the entire time.
Right.
So the banks are
That's right.
benefiting themselves from delaying your transfers.
That's right.
And,
All right.
and since they have a monopoly, they've been getting away with it. And the government is going along with this and getting its portion of the payola,
The corporatocracy.
the corporatocracy and the
Mhm.
middlemen. And
Mhm.
so the key to having an honest banking system is, number one, not allowing it to be monopolized by the banks and the government. And number two, not allowing middlemen, not allowing a pipeline to develop that can become a transfer monopoly, not allowing a middleman to benefit from the simple transfer or the transaction
Mhm.
itself. Just directly connect the people as if they were standing there face to face and do that transaction without a middleman. And then you get rid of the whole problem of monopolization of the banking system. You get rid of the transfer monopoly. You get rid of all of this, illicit trading, all of it. You get rid of it all in one big fell swoop. And that's what our global family bilateral bank system does. It just gets rid of it. So it doesn't promote its own version of it, it gets rid of it.
Yeah. Okay, Anna, I'm going to get back to the questions. And if we can, I think some of these are going to be pretty quick. We can do a little rapid fire and get through a bunch of them. So, roads to ruins, road to ruins. Why isn't the Federation using AFDs for expenses? Is it due to rules of the fiduciary?
No, it's not doing anything I'm doing to delay it. That would be completely stupid to even think. I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult you, but my entire effort here has been to secure the assets and make them available to the actual owners, which is you and me. And so, no, it's not the fiduciary's office that's doing anything to stop it. It's the fiduciary's office that's promoting it and getting it organized to do. And why is the Federation using AFDs for expenses? Well, we're not using AFDs for expenses for the same reason you're not using AFDs to go to the store and buy bread yet. There is an entire process, some of which I explained today related to the B system, but also the connectivity aspects of this. Once it starts trading, the different ways that money or credit can be transferred, all that has to be worked out with these different systems. And we have to be able to connect our system to your bank account so that you, within your bank account, can trade with other people who have a bank account in global, but can also trade with people who don't have a bank account in global.
Which would maybe explain this one. Why can't we transfer our AFD to others with vendor accounts?
Well, you can. You can transfer AFD to others who have vendor accounts. It's just that you
We
won't be
can't do it
able to.
right now. Like physically, we can't do it
Right,
right now.
right. Well, that tool is being adjusted and beta tested and whatnot. But the idea that we have here going immediately is that you'll be able to pay with AFD with vendors who have accounts in the system. So that would be the very first thing that we have over 300 vendors now, and that doesn't sound like much, but there are 300 vendors that you can spend AFD with, and there are more vendors adding every day. So that's good all in and of itself. But and it doesn't take many large vendors added to that list, and suddenly, okay, you're able to trade with Amazon. Okay, you're able to trade with Hertz Rent-A-Car. Okay, you're able to trade with all these other different companies. So there's that. But then there is also a system by which we can use AFD in the standard commercial market by translating it. And so that involves having QR code readers, which many businesses already have, and assigning a QR code to your account so that your account can directly connect to, say, the QRC code of Lowe's. And so you see how we're doing this. This is because it's a direct system, because there's no middleman, there's no SWIFT, there's no anybody in the middle. It has to be done direct, one by one, so that our QRC code for our account connects directly to Lowe's QRC code, or HEB's QRC code.
So this is the connectivity that's being worked on, friends. This is the connectivity, right, Anna?
Right. Well, and we're also trying to work out something with the, if you will, the other players, the other people, the other entities that are engaged in all this stuff, so that we can connect and do a transaction with, say, Visa, or a transaction with MasterCard. I have to take this call. Just a second, kids, okay?
Sure.
Can you mute me?
Yep. All right, guys. Oops, I meant to pull her out.
So Niti, can we talk about the question that's in the chat about the power of attorney? I have a power of attorney for my mom who has Alzheimer's. Can I sign all of her paperwork for her to become an ASN and take the SIA test for her so she can have a GFG bank account? I don't believe that you can on this one. It is about us accepting ourselves and comprehending what our American status is. And unfortunately, it may be too late at that point.
So can I ask you a question about that, Lisa? Well, I mean, the reason I'm sorry to interrupt you that way, because I think a lot of folks don't comprehend that as an American who's declared, then, we have a different responsibility now. And just like children, you have a mother who has Alzheimer's. She's unable really to be responsible. And we who are declared as sovereigns, we are more responsible. We are 100% liable for our actions, for whatever it is that we're doing. And if we can't speak and promote and defend ourselves, which someone who has Alzheimer's, or like a child, they can't really competently operate. Isn't that right?
That's right. So it's sort of seen in the same way, or viewed in the same way that a child would be. We can do a baby deed on a child, but they still, when they get to be 21, have to choose to be American. They have to make that choice themselves and declare themselves. And so right at this time, unless Anna differs with that, you are basically in guardianship. When you have that power of attorney, you're not necessarily actually able to have someone declare themselves competent to take on their adult duty as an American state national, or as an American. So I'm sorry to tell you that, Russell, but that's really the thought behind it. Powers of attorney are great in the other district for those kinds of things, but I really do believe that they have to make that choice and declare themselves and be sentient to do that.
Yeah, Anna, we were just telling Russell that we believe that he can't do this because the mother or anybody needs to be competent to declare themselves.
Yeah, you can't really take the SIA test for her. There are certain things that you have to do for yourself. In their system, you can basically take over her person and just run roughshod over her and, sell her house out from under her and leave her completely impoverished. That's the danger of giving anyone a general power of attorney. But in our system, some sanity has to rule and some justice and fairness. In our system, someone who holds a power of attorney is responsible as if they were an attorney, and they have to meet the prudent man standard in our world, in our law. And so, for example, I'm sure it would be convenient for you to set up an account for her, and then she would get the AFD disbursements every month, and then you would have access to them to spend them for her care. But what if you were a rat? What if you were just, siphoning off her AFD and using it for trips to Acapulco while leaving her on the public dole in a rest home?
Yep. Like people have done. We see it every day.
Right. So we don't do that.
Mm-mm. Okay, so Sandra wants to know, so the Pope and the Brits got away with 2 scams: to say your baby is dead and then turn around and make money off the same assume dead baptismal baby, insurance fraud if the baby died after the birth did. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's all insurance fraud, because in order to have insurance, you have to have an ownership interest in the asset that's insured. Now, we all know this from experience with, say, automobile insurance. You can't get automobile insurance on a car you don't own. So in order to make their insurance fraud work so that they can collect life insurance on us after we die, they claim an ownership interest in us by registering us.
Is it necessary for already properly declared Americans to follow the new process as laid out in an article for lawyers and non-lawyers, which includes getting statement from a medical doctor that you are alive?
No, but it certainly puts a crink in their little red wagon wheels when they're trying to administer an estate of a dead person. And this is where this comes in is when they've given up on the municipal level and they start addressing you with an upper lowercase court, and they're dragging you into admiralty. Okay, they've already declared you legally and civilly dead. Okay, your name has been declared legally and civilly dead in their system. And so when you walk into a courtroom in admiralty, what's under discussion is the administration of the estate of a dead British territorial merchant mariner. And that presumed dead, okay, his body has never been found, right? But the British merchant mariner, the warrant officer, who has the same rating as a midshipman in the British Navy, who's called a Mr., and his wife called a Mrs., or his daughter called a Miss, or his son called a Master. Okay, this is the British title system that you're bumping up against here. They'll try to call you Mr. and Mrs. and all this. They're giving you a title, and by giving you a title, they're establishing the legal presumption that you're in their British title system. So never allow them to call you anything. Don't allow them to, give you any kind of title at all, or they're going to claim that, yes, you willingly accepted and consented to participate in and to accept a title. Okay.
Mm.
So you never want to allow that. Okay, but they're also going to come forward and they're going to be administering the estate of this legally dead, presumed to be lost British sailor. And you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be confused as hell because that British sailor has the same exact name as you. So it looks like you are the defendant when you're not. It's the estate of a civilly dead and legally dead British warrant officer in the British Merchant Marines that they're addressing. That's what a taxpayer is. A taxpayer is a British warrant officer in the Merchant Marine Service whose job it is to collect taxes and tariffs and remit them to the Queen's Treasury or the King's Treasury. And gee, doesn't that just put a whole different spin on the IRS? Okay, so they've got you pegged as a dead merchant marine officer in the British Merchant Marine Service, and that's what they're administering when they drag you into an upper and lower case court. Well, gee, you show up with a certificate signed by a doctor, and guess what? They no longer have the presumptions that you're dead or that this person is dead. All right. Now, the reason that it's important and good to have a statement from your doctor at a particular time is that you're alive on this date and time, is that they've had you dead since about 7 years after the first birth certificate was established. So according to their records, you've been dead for a long time. And suddenly you show up with this affirmation that, oh, well, this person is still alive and they're living in, Freeport, Kentucky. What are they going to do? They no longer have the same basis for their presumptions. Their presumptions have just been challenged, and they've been. The good part is that they've been the presumption has been challenged by another doctor. In the British system, doctors outrank all attorneys and judges.
And the 7-year thing is the due diligence period.
Right. This is where they just arbitrarily declare you legally and civilly dead because of their own bankruptcies. So anyway, suddenly, by introducing that information when you're in an admiralty court, when it's an upper and lower case court and an upper and lower case named defendant, suddenly you've got something in your hand that counteracts their presumptions about the entire situation. And they had set things up. You'll notice that when the birth certificate is first issued and your name is registered as a U.S. capital C citizen for the very first time, it's signed by who? A medical doctor. So if a medical doctor and your mother both affirm that you are a U.S. capital C citizen and register you, you've got two witnesses standing against your claim, and you've also got a officer that outranks any lawyer, so the lawyer can plead that, well, he couldn't overturn the determinations of a superior officer. So when you bring in another MD who says, no, they're alive, then it really does create a problem for the courts. Their presumption has been challenged, and they can no longer just go along and think, oh, well, this is a different entity, a different person, right? They're suddenly stuck in the same sort of mesh of deceit and impersonation that they've created for you. Now they have to answer the fact that, well, this person is alive.
Do you need 2 other witnesses or anything else to go along with that?
No, the medical doctor counteracts the birth certificate doctor's signature, and your own witness stands against your mother's. Because actually this was a choice that she supposedly made, even though she acted without disclosure, for you. And now that you're past the age of 21, you can make your own decisions about what kind of political status you adopt.
Wow.
Now they tried
And the
to
medical
keep
doctor, I'm sorry, the medical doctor is a higher, basically a higher position than the judge, then too,
right,
isn't it? It stands
right,
as a superior
right.
law. Yeah.
And so when you have that little statement from your MD, it just completely upsets their apple cart in admiralty court.
So you can just ask for dismissal based on that alone. All
Or
right.
they will move to dismiss.
Do you want to let them do it?
Well, it's been our experience that when they see that information come across the desk, they gotta go.
Bye. Bye. Okay. How to discern whether interacting with territorial British or municipal corp entity of other countries. For example, India has a Prime Minister Modi and President Murmu. Which is which? Interesting question.
Well, the Prime Minister would be part of the British system, and the President would be part of the other system, the municipal system. But when it comes to dealing with these courts, the municipal courts, one way or another, are always in capital letters, all capital letters, consistently throughout the history of the entire thing. These are corporations, and when you see all capital letters, you're dealing with a corporate court, okay? But when you're dealing with an admiralty court, what you see is the use of traditional English upper lowercase.
Who can or cannot be an ombudsman committee? Can any status corrected man or woman in the assembly be on the ombudsman committee? Example, can elected officials be on ombudsman committee like recorders?
Yes, anybody can be on an ombudsman committee. You'll see a lot of wrongdoing go on with ombudsman committees. Ombudsman's committees and oversight committees are two of the main bottlenecks that people who are trained in the evil system gravitate toward as a means of using and abusing coercive power that they think they then hold as members of the Ombudsman's Committee or as members of an oversight committee. And in our system, that simply isn't true, but that doesn't keep them from trying to abusively abuse the true functions of both the ombudsman and the oversight committees. So it's important that anybody and everybody can join the ombudsman committee if they are willing and able to put in the kind of time and be patient about the work of the actual ombudsman committee. Lisa has her hand up there.
I was going to say, Anna, it is, with the ombudsman committee, I think the important things is, our assemblies are really striving towards peace. And the ombudsman is really there to assist in helping two parties understand each other and come to some type of peace between them, so that they're taking an active role in saying, listen to this point, listen to that point, and help each other kind of mesh their points together. It's the same. I mean, that's really, we don't spend enough time. We got two ears and one mouth. We don't spend enough time listening and hearing both parties, because both can be right and both can be wrong at the same time. And the job of the ombudsman is help them understand where that is. Okay. And it takes a very patient, it takes a very patient kind of person to be on the ombudsman, and someone who listens a lot of times more than they speak. But they also have to be willing to listen to the facts and be able to pick the facts out, right? Because that's going to help them in the conversation to bring peace to whatever situation and understanding to whatever situation it is. So, that's it. It's ombudsman committee and the oversight committee. They're especially dealing with the facts, but also listening to the emotion in the ombudsman committee. Because again, both can be right and both can be wrong.
Right. And oversight is misunderstood. An oversight committee is for when there's an actual allegation of criminal wrongdoing of some kind or really gross administrative malfeasance. And then an oversight committee is created to actually look into that problem.
Right.
So it's not like a standing committee.
Well, you can have a standing oversight committee of people that are interested in the issues of oversight and discussing how to properly conduct oversight investigations and all those sorts of issues. Yeah, they can be doing that. But when it comes to a specific investigation, you're going to draft people to investigate.
And so she's asking, do you have an ombudsman or oversight committee handbook?
Not at this point. What we've got going is basically a handbook that tells you how to build an assembly. And as part of that, then we have descriptions of committees. And we have how the committees work, or they're supposed to, and pros and cons of committees, and exactly, what dangers are associated with the ombudsman and the oversight committee. So we do discuss it, and we try to make it as clear as possible what the actual jobs of these committees are, and how you can, as an assembly, prevent those committees from being inappropriately interpreted and inappropriately used.
Chris wants to know, when responding to a summons with non-negotiable, should it be written diagonally or horizontally? Should the autograph be written the same way? If horizontal, should it be on the top or the bottom?
I think that you should just do it diagonally and read across the face of whatever it is that you receive. And then the autograph should be the standard autograph. And I'll explain the standard autograph. You use a byline as if you're the author, right? As if you were writing a book. You're going to say by, B-Y, upper lowercase, full colon, and then you're going to do the signature. And at the end of your signature, as part of your signature, at the very end, you're going to make a little C with a circle around it. You're going to make the copyright notice symbol, and you're going to write it by hand. And it's going to be attached at the end of your signature. Every time you do a signature, you are going to copyright. You're going to post a private copyright notice of your signature, and you're going to use a byline so that it's clear that you are the author and that you are holding the copyright on that signature. You're going to do all this in blue. And then you're going to take your little red thumbprint and you're going to impose it over the blue signature. And what does that imply? It implies that you are imposing the land over the sea.
Wow.
The red over the blue. So you want to do the signature first, and then you want to put your little red thumbprint right over that signature, usually at the back of the signature so that it's not obscured overly much by the thumbprint. But what you're basically telling them is, I'm subjecting the sea to the land.
Mm.
Okay. And most of the symbolic things like that are based on, red is for land, blue is for sea. Do you want the sea over the land or the land over the sea?
Mm.
where are you operating?
This dude, he says, is a variant of our social security number or SPC number, same for Q for exemption number and treasury direct number, are all variants of the social, are they all variants of the social security number?
I don't know what an SPC number is.
Okay, this dude, we don't really know. Joseph, is there anything that I or the Massachusetts Assembly can assist with regarding your missing granddaughter, Alexis Belcher?
Well, we're just waiting to get details, which are slower than molasses, and gathering up photographs so that you can recognize her if you see her on the street. But other than that, there isn't really a lot anyone can do. I mean, of course, the impulse is to drop everything, fly to Massachusetts, and go wander the streets like you're looking for a lost dog. But there really isn't anything anyone can do except, keep an eye out and hope and pray.
They want an Amber Alert out through the FBI.
Well, the Springfield police told the mother that she couldn't even file a missing persons report because the authorities had already filed one. To which I said, BS, anyone can always file a missing person report on anybody. I mean, I can report a missing persons report on Niti. I mean, if she didn't show up for this podcast, I could go out and say, hey, there's something wrong here. So anyway.
There's lots of prayers coming through, Anna. And Julio wants to know, what is the name of the school?
I haven't even been given that yet. See, I'm just the great-grandmother. I don't get any information except when the mother gets information, and they're trying to block her from getting information.
They're asking if the Continental Marshal Service can help with the situation.
Well, it's definitely an international jurisdiction because child trafficking and those sorts of issues are an international jurisdiction. However, in this case, we don't have any indicators that say that she's been kidnapped exactly. We don't have any proof that she's been kidnapped or that she's being trafficked. We just know that she's missing at this point.
The Massachusetts Assembly has said they welcome the Continental Marshals or any assistance that you need.
Well, I don't know if anybody is even in that area of Massachusetts, but it's Springfield, Massachusetts, where she disappeared. And, we're doing our due diligence and investigating Springfield. And as Lisa said, there are a lot of kids that go missing in Springfield for some reason.
Is a re-entry program a lawful assembly way requirement to participate in our assembly after a timeout, to include having to write a letter of apology?
Well, I wish people would just get themselves out of the way and stop all this pandering and prideful, stupid behavior because, we're all trying our best to do something that hasn't been done in a very long time. And we all make mistakes. And there shouldn't be any bowing and scraping and apologies necessary to re-enter after a timeout. A timeout is supposed to be progressive, and it's supposed to be clearly stated. The reasons for it are supposed to be clearly stated. And, it's basically supposed to be left up to the individual's choice of whether they're going to continue the behavior or not. Let me give you an example. You show up drunk and disorderly because you're in the middle of an ugly divorce and the judge just gave custody of your children to your soon-to-be ex-wife, right? So you're ranting and raving and you're very upset. And you come to an assembly meeting uh, all hot and bothered, and this is your major problem, and you want to take up assembly time with it. So you bust in and on the agenda where you were not even on the agenda, and you start in this half-hour rant about your own personal problems. Okay. Okay. The marshal at arms sees that you're drunk, that you're disorderly, that you violated the agenda, that you're on a personal rant, and he's going to come up to you and he's going to say, he's going to take you out of the meeting. He's going to take you aside and he's going to say, look, we understand that you're upset. We truly do. And we would like to find ways to help you and thousands of other people like you. And we're working on that. But there's a way to do things and a way not to do things. And so I have to ask you to leave the meeting, and you'll be barred from any assembly activities for 3 days while you soak your head about this and decide to do the right thing and let the assembly get on with its real business and bring your issues forward to the litigation committee or other appropriate venues for you to talk about all this. Okay, most of us, even if we were drunk, would step back and go, oh, okay, well, I see your point. I did really bust in and I did all this, and yeah, okay. And we'd go home and we'd cool out, and next time we came back to the assembly, we'd be looking at the litigation committee, and we'd be meeting members on the litigation committee, and we'd be talking in the committee about things like this, and we get on. However, sometimes there are people that don't even take that kind of a hint that what you're doing is wrong, and it's causing disruption, and it's keeping the assembly from doing what it's supposed to do and what it needs to do. So they come back, and a couple of weeks later, and the judge has handed them a bad decision, and they're again drunk and disorderly and in the middle of the assembly meeting, and again the marshal at arms takes them out and says, hey, remember me? We already went through this once. I explained to you why you can't do this. Okay, I'm kicking you out, and you can't do anything. You can't attend any assembly functions for 2 weeks. Okay, this is totally fair. This, there's a clear statement of what you're doing wrong, why it isn't tolerated, and here's 2 weeks to soak your head and think about it. What if he does it again? Well, then maybe he's out for 3 months. What if he does it again? Maybe he's out for 6 months. What if he does it again? Maybe he's out for a year. Okay, it's progressive. And at each incident, whatever it is that the person is doing is explained to them, and they're given a choice. And then they're barred for a certain amount of time, and a progressive amount of time. And then they're welcome back.
Sometimes it's meant to be able to give someone a little bit of time, not only to cool off, to think about their behavior, but also sometimes to learn the ways of what the proper ways of our assemblies are in order to do the business that we're going to be faced with. And
Right.
and I think that's I think that's one of the things. It's not meant to be vindictive by any assembly, but it is meant to be something that calls attention to a behavior that's not acceptable to the assembly and that interferes with the actual business of the assembly. And I think that's what it is. And, sometimes we have to look at those times as, opportunities for us to learn something, something that we either didn't know or didn't, one of the values that we didn't espouse before that behavior surfaced. So
Right. And it doesn't have to be something as obvious as drunk and disorderly. It can be something that isn't so obvious. Say you've got an assembly meeting in progress And you bring up the issue of choosing a congressional delegation. Well, it's an issue that the Assembly will have to consider at a point in the future. But until it gets its own functions working and it gets stood up and functional, it's not time to start having a Congress, okay? Because the delegates have got to be educated. They have to know how their assembly functions. They have to know how the government's put together. They have to be thoroughly familiar with all the different documents before they actually go to a continental Congress. So you've gotten your horse way out in front of your cart, okay? And you're distracting the attention of the other members of the assembly on an issue that is in the future, yes, but it's not present right now. You've got things out of order. And because you've got them out of order and you're distracting away from the actual business at hand, you're causing a disruption. Now, we had an example of that in California. Great guy, but he kept bringing up these issues that were way out in the future, things that actually distracted from getting the work done now, today, And so we finally had to, issue a timeout on him because he was doing this consistently. And, finally we sat down with him. We explained exactly why it was disruptive and why we finally had to take this action. And then he understood it. And the biggest problem with that is that he didn't understand it while it was happening. So it was not the kind of process it should have been where you take the guy aside and you say, hey, you can't do this and here's why. And so, go think about this and study on it for 3 days and come back. Well, so the assembly and the marshal at arms in particular needs to be very clear about, taking people aside, telling them why their behavior is inappropriate and how it is damaging the progress of the assembly, and giving them these progressive opportunities to stop the behavior.
Can our land jurisdiction business recorded with our LRO obtain an EIN for banking purposes only so we can pay bills? And are our businesses covered under indemnity bond?
Yes.
Yep. I have where did it go? Got a little clarity over here for the question that we were trying to answer up here. So I wanted to just bring that back. If I can find it fast enough. And then that'll be our last thing. I just wanted to go ahead and put it on this because we were just discussing it. There's lots of prayers on here, Anna. And the Massachusetts Assembly coordinator lives in the county where Springfield is, just so you know.
Oh, wow.
Just so you know. They want you to know that. Well, here it goes. This SPC stood for Secured Party Creditor.
No. It's not a variant of the SSN. For Q for exemption.
I don't know what. Same question for exemption.
These are treasury codes that really don't have anything to do with Americans. Okay, this is really, really important, folks. None of this has anything to do with you. I don't know how to put it any more clearly. When these foreign courts send you a summons, they're not summoning you. When they send out a complaint, when they swear out an indictment, when they do anything, they're not talking to you. They're talking to and about a franchise, a corporate franchise that they created for their own benefit and named after you. It's theirs. It belongs to them. It's not a living man or woman. It's a corporate franchise, like a Dairy Queen franchise. And that's why it's not really profitable to us to spend our time learning all their federal code and all of the arcane language and all the rest of the crap that goes into, actually fighting a federal code case or a municipal code case. Because the code doesn't apply to you. It never has. We are not franchised corporations. We are people, okay? So when all this stuff is going on over here in this fictional world, it's fictional. It does not apply to you. And I know people have a really hard time because they identify with their name. But the fact is that they're not talking about you. They're talking about their own franchise corporation that's been named after you. Now, if you think about it, you've experienced this phenomenon all your life in terms of seeing it around you. What do you see? Sears and Roebuck. Okay. Well, Sears was a real man. Roebuck was a real man. Their business is named after them, right? J.C. Penney. J.C. Penney was a real person, a living man. The corporation was named after him, right? So the idea of having a corporation named after you isn't really that strange or unfamiliar, is it? But you can see that the corporation is not the man. You're also very familiar with the concept of corporate franchises. You realize that when you see a McDonald's or a Dairy Queen or a Wendy's Hamburgers or any one of these other businesses established in multiple towns and states, that they are franchises. And you recognize the brand and the franchise. And you realize that if you go into a Dairy Queen in Tecumseh, Washington, and then go into a Dairy Queen in South Dakota, you're going to see a very similar roster of products on offer, and it's going to be presented in much the same way. It's a franchise of a much larger parent corporation called Dairy Queen Incorporated, and there's even above that Dairy Queen International that has all of these different Dairy Queen franchises all over the world, right? So we know about corporate franchises. So now I want you to put these two things together, the fact that you can have a corporation named after you and the fact that there are franchises. And when I tell you that what they are addressing in these courts and what they are addressing with all of their correspondence about anything are their own franchises, not you. Okay? So they created these corporations, they named them after you, and guess what? Because they did this, because they acted as public usufructs, because they latched onto your name, because they copyrighted your name, and because they used your name to create a franchise corporation in their organization and named it after you, they owe you what's called a usufructuary duty. They have the duty to hold you harmless from anything, any charge, any harm that results from the existence of their franchise. And really, that's all you have to do is say, hey, you created this franchise to benefit your corporation. You named it after me without my knowledge or consent. And you have the usufructuary duty to hold me harmless from any charges or other inconveniences or harms that result from the existence of this corporation. Now, that's flat out all there is to it. And if you have any complaints or you have any questions or you have any needs or you think that your franchise has a claim upon me and my assets, well, go talk to the Treasury Department. They have an exemption account that is supposed to be used to pay off anything that is brought against me as a result of the existence of your corporation.
Sometimes, Anna, I think and I know the need out there is great. And people they're strapped to the mat. They're suffering, and it's really difficult for a lot of them to even live and keep a roof over their head and all the other things. But I keep trying to focus the assemblies on right now. The most important thing that you can do is help your assembly get standing. Help your assembly get to the point where it's going to be able to be seated, because it's in our ability to affect at the federal level as well as our state level the way everything is done. And if we don't all get serious about getting our state assemblies seated and then starting to work on our counties, some of this will never happen. And I also bring up the fact that it only takes one generation to quit working at our freedom for all of it to slip away again.
Right.
So all of you out there need, it is absolutely necessary to go and get your state assemblies up and rolling. There's plenty of help available. We've got a good path. Let's use it.
Right.
Get on that path. All right.
Well, I just want to add a couple of things to that too. Okay. Number one, you're in General Assembly. All of you are in General Assembly, and that's job one. Okay. Job two is to bring the other aspects, the other pillars into place: the militia, the courts, and the business assembly. Okay. Each one of these things, as it's completed, becomes truly functional in its own right. And there's really no big cachet to being fully seated. That's something I think people are missing, is that you're still functioning, you're still valid, you're still okay, but you want to get all four of these things complete and functional so that you are, quote unquote, fully seated, fully functional, and operating on your own, and you're at the point where you can make decisions and you can function for your people in your state. Okay. One of the things that keeps coming up is, where's our Article 3 courts? Where's our Supreme Court? Well, the answer is your Supreme Court is your county court.
Right. You are.
Your Supreme Court is local. Your Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the land, is your county court. And people go, because they're used to thinking of, the U.S. Supreme Court. Well, no. Your Supreme Court is the county court. So getting your county assembled is very, very important. Okay? So all of these aspects taken together create a working, breathing, living machine. It's an organic thing. Think about it. It's a government outpoured by the people, and people are living, right? So it's an organic process. It's an organic machine. And you are building this. And you're building it because it's for your own benefit. You're not building it because Anna says so. You're not building it for my sake per se. I'm building it for my sake, yes, but I'm not. I'm just one person like everybody else here, right?
That's right.
So we're all doing this for our own benefit, for our own protection, for the security of our own assets.
And and also because if we allow slavery for anyone, we allow the potential slavery for ourselves. And we have to do
We're the
this for
ones we're
everyone.
waiting on.
Yeah,
We
we're
are the
waiting.
ones we're waiting on.
So like Russell's saying over here, Anna, that he's saying, hey, Lisa, there are coordinators in MAA who will not allow assembly members to do anything on their state. Well, Anna has the Thursday coordinator training. And,
Right.
Everybody should build a group of people who, can be the coordinators for their state. And then you can walk into your assembly with the new trained coordinators and
Add them to the
volunteer.
And I can say too, from perspective within the
You're breaking up a little bit, Lisa. I'm sorry. What?
Sorry.
You were breaking up. We couldn't really hear you.
From inside the assembly, who decides? The people are always at the top of every pillar. It's the people who decide. So step up, claim your right of voting and the power that you have, and say, that's not how that's going to go. You're sitting back and waiting for this coordinator to act like a CEO, and you're placing that on them arms when it's you that has all of the power within your assembly. Each man or woman's vote. Put it together and make it work.
Right. And, many times coordinators have to do things or have to tell assemblies that assemblies don't like. But if what the coordinator is doing is correct, then you have to respect that too. You have to learn enough so that you're just not, arbitrarily going out and shooting down coordinators. You have to do your own investigation to realize whether or not what they're doing is right or not.
Well,
if it's according to the blueprint and it's law. Go ahead.
We'll be looking for more people on Thursdays. And you can watch the replays of the entire program that Anna has been presenting on Rumble. So we do share all those links. They're all in. If you look at the show notes, there's a United States of America link tree, guys. And in there, on the link tree, there is a link for all the education that Anna has been offering. It's all right there.
Right. And, the coordinator training gets into things that are a little bit more complex or less off the beaten path. There are things that coordinators are going to have to deal with that, Joe Average is never going to have to deal with. And we're going through lots of processes to help train coordinators to deal with the specific office that they are going to be working in. But I think what will really help is if we can get our coordinator materials, like the book, How to Build an Assembly. And then everybody will have this little book in their hand and they can go, oh, that's how it's supposed to go. Oh, and that's why that's the way it is. And then, not only will the coordinator have some guideline to follow that they can point to and say, oh, instead of hunting and picking through all of my different articles and trying to, keep up with all the changes that have occurred over the past 10 years, they can look at the updated version of How to Build an Assembly. And this will give you guidance not only now, but in the future. Our assemblies traditionally, customarily, come into session and go out of session. They're not they're not continually in session as they are now. They're continually in session now because we're getting our legs back, our land legs back, and we're rebuilding the whole system, right? But traditionally, state assemblies go into session, stay in session for a period of time necessary to conduct the current business, and then they go out of session. It used to follow the season of the agricultural seasons. The assemblies would never be in assembly in the spring or the fall. They would always be in assembly in high summer, like July 4th, or they would be in assembly in the winter because the farmers had to have time to plant the crops and harvest the crops. Okay, so
Growing season. Yeah.
our assemblies have this tradition of coming into session and going out of session. And in the future, once everything is nailed down and we have this country running the way it should, and the government is pared down to its limited functions, and everybody is much better off for that, then you can expect that you will regularly have to reconvene your assembly and bring it back into session and get all of the parts, geared up and working again. Every 6 months, every year, there'll be a flow and ebb, and the assembly will take care of business. So, building an assembly is not just a one-time job. You're going to have a standing committee that's called the session committee that at the end of the whole process will be there ready for when the day comes that you go out of session and you all go home and you take care of your own lives and your own business. And then the sessions committee will bring you back into session by letting everybody know, hey guys, we're coming back into session on, June 30th. Here's the roster of hot agenda items that are to be considered in this assembly. You see, so this isn't just a one-time, one-off thing. You're going to have to reconvene and bring your assemblies back into session repeatedly, unless your assembly decides that, hey, we're going to be an assembly that's in continual process. We're going to stay in session for a year, something like that, which you can do. But I'm just pointing out to everybody that don't think of this as a one-time only. You may go through this process of assembling numerous times. I mean, think of it as a church. It's not a church, and it's not religious, but when a church is first formed, it doesn't have a building. It doesn't have a parish education committee. It doesn't have all these different things are not just there. Okay, they have to build it, and people have to populate those committees and functions. Okay, once they've got it up and rolling, and people are in these different functions, they're doing different things, well, then they can open up the doors on Sunday and everybody comes together and they assemble and they do everything according to their custom. And we take this for granted, right? It's not like the Methodists suddenly disappear during the week, even though everybody isn't at the church, right? They're off about their world. They're at school. They're at work. They're attending PTA meetings. They're doing all sorts of things. They're going grocery shopping during the week, and then magically on Sunday, boom, the doors open. Everybody comes to church. They assemble. Well, it's very similar with our state assemblies. When our state assemblies are not in session, everybody goes on about their business. But then when the doors open, everybody comes in, everybody knows what their job is. Everybody goes to their, appointed thing. The choir members go upstairs. The minister goes to the front of the church. Everybody gets into their place and everybody does their thing. It's the same way with our assemblies. We all have different jobs that we do.
Well, Anna, we're all praying for Alexis. We're going to be praying for the updates. We want to give you all the tight squeezes that we can send. And Massachusetts is ready to stand and help you in any way that they can. So, I mean, I think anybody would. We're all here. So we'll be lifting you guys and looking for an update. And in the meantime, friends, let's get busy. Let's use all this information that we got today. Thank you, Anna, for your time. Thanks for always showing up. We love you, and we will see you next Tuesday.
I try to be consistent.
You are consistent.
Okay. All right, guys.